Welcome to the 15th episode of Renegade Thinkers Live, a show that promises to be long on marketing insights and short on overhyped buzzwords. We'll be drinking in the latest tactics and the coolest gin. Yep, this may be the only live marketing show that also features a gin tasting. This show is being live streamed via our friends at Restream. And if you want to drink along at home, today we're tasting Dry Fly Distillery's Washington Dry Gin. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio here in New York City. And thank you for joining us. When we first started CMO Huddles in April 2020, one of the themes that emerged early was when the going gets tough, the tough hug their customers. No one knew at that moment what business conditions would be like for the remainder of the year, let alone the next 3 months. But what we did know was that every existing customer was a precious jewel that needed to be protected and guarded with everything that you had. So what happened, what's so interesting is we had to guard it with like a precious jewel that needed to be protected, a sapling that needed to be nurtured, and in some cases, a damaged vessel that needed to be rescued. Not that retention wasn't important before, but now it was a top organizational priority. And CMOs were increasingly likely to have had their hand in customer success, either directly or indirectly. So when faced with uncertainty, the savvy marketer focuses on the bird in hand, so to speak. And for the better part of the last year, many companies did just that, and something crazy happened. Their business thrived. Some ended up selling more to their existing customers. Others created so much goodwill that it helped drive new customers via referrals and advocacy. And as it turns out, wow, I am having some struggling times here with my little script, but wow. Okay, we are live, just in case anybody was wondering. So as it turns out, customer centricity is in fact a growth strategy. Healthy, happy customers beget more of the same, especially if you can turn them into brand advocates. So the question of the hour is exactly how do you cultivate customer champions? To answer that question, let's bring on Marshall. You got to help me. Marshall Poindexter, the CMO of OpenEye Scientific. Marshall, how are you?
Great. I am thrilled to be here, Drew. Thanks again for the invitation.
Oh my gosh, and thank you for saving me from my opening there. But let's talk about being a customer-centric marketer. Where should this process start?
Well, first of all, every marketer should be customer centric, right? I mean, if not, why are we in this business of trying to drive awareness of our companies? But, failing that, I think there's 3 areas that a marketer should focus on to become more customer centric. First of all, you need to understand, what your current customers are doing with your products. Are they using them? Are they using them well? Are they getting the value out of them? So hopefully you have a CRM tool that you use to track your customer relationships, but even more importantly, hopefully the product team at your organization is, tracking usage and getting an understanding of how customers are or are not using your products. Because if you can find out who's not using your products, you then can begin to create customer retention or marketing campaigns towards those customers, maybe with some tips and tricks, some how-to videos, to supplement maybe some of the in-person outreach that a customer success team might be doing to try to, get those customers excited about the products that they've already purchased from you. So you hopefully get more renewals. On the prospect side, I think, you obviously want to understand who your buyers are and create content that is going to, engage them, make them aware of you, and make them want to buy from you. So getting in their mindset, creating buyer personas. And then finally, you've got to let your customers tell your story for you through customer testimonials on video, in print form. If you capture why they're so passionate about you and your products, they're going to influence prospects to buy.
So that was a lot that I've got to try to break down. But the first thing that you talked about was understanding the customer. And then the next thing that you talked about was making sure that they were using your service to its full advantage. And that was one area that I think a lot of CMOs were sort of surprised by when they circled back at the beginning of the pandemic and they went to their customers, particularly software customers. Either they discovered that they weren't using the product as much, or they didn't know that you could have helped them with this. And so I'm curious, in some of the things that you did, was that an important part of sort of getting, as the customer outreach was happening, were you finding some things out like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, customers don't always tell you, what they like or don't like about your product. So you have to proactively reach out to them or have data that tells you what they're doing. And so I was finding that, our customers were, some of them were really heavy users. Others were, not using it hardly at all. And so we did some surveys. We asked them why that was. And then we uncovered at certain accounts that there were some issues with how they used our software that we could address with training, with tips and tricks, with educational marketing campaigns that helped them see, wow, you know what? I didn't realize that I could do that. And so now I can, and I'm going to start using that part of the software.
Yeah, and what I think is so interesting is I know we should be doing this all the time, but when business is good and you've got all sorts of leads coming in and you're acquiring new customers, it's easy to lose sight of your existing customers. But there's nothing like a crisis of a moment where you go, I don't know if there's any new business out there to really bring you back to it. But I think there's an assumption, and this is one that you sort of learned, that you've got this customer and they know everything about you already. And so you don't want to bother them. But in truth, they really need your help. And they need your help to take advantage of the product that you're providing them. I think that's so interesting. The second thing that you said, or actually the third thing you said, was, getting your customers to do testimonials. And that's something that every CMO wants. We talk a lot about that in huddles and getting them, but there's challenges to that. Not every customer wants to talk or go on the record or is comfortable. So was there anything that you all did to sort of generate and get your customers to be more comfortable giving testimonials?
Yeah, I think it goes back to getting them to use your product and getting them excited about using your product. So if you do that work ahead of time, what we were just talking about, it's more likely that they would be open to it. I mean, sometimes you still run into challenges with large companies with their legal department that no, we can't really endorse your product in a public way. But there are ways to do that in news releases or as customer references that are a little bit more behind the scenes. But there's lots of ways to get people excited about your product. And then you just have to show them, if you tell your story, you could actually help more people benefit from this product as well. And a lot of times they're excited about that. They want to do it.
Very cool. All right, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But let's bring on Jakki Geiger, the former CMO of Reltio and star of episode 197 of Renegade Thinkers Unite. Hi, Jakki. How are you?
Hey, Drew. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great. So let's talk about, where did customer success fit into your role at Reltio?
Absolutely. Well, ultimately, the chief customer officer owns the KPIs for customer success, CSAT or NPS scores. But I personally believe that customer success is everybody's job, right? It's a cross-functional ownership. And for the CMO in particular, I feel like the customer experience starts with the buying process. So that's really where I spend a lot of my time, trying to figure out where are those friction points in the buying process that could be eliminated to make it easier to become aware of the company, to get educated, so you're considered, to make it easier to make a decision about which, whether our company is the right company to meet your challenges that you're trying to deal with, and ultimately making a decision and becoming a customer. So I feel fortunate because what I try to do is I try to develop personal relationships with customers. I try to get to know them. I have this belief that, customers are not companies, customers are people. So the talk track and how a company approaches discussing customers, is it ABC Corporation Or is it, Bob Smith, the chief data officer of ABC Corporation? And what is Bob trying to do? What are his goals? Why did he buy this technology? What are the outcomes he's after? And how can we all work together to make sure those outcomes are realized in the timeline that they're supposed to be delivered? So I truly believe that, the CMO does have a really strong role to play in customer success and in delivering a better customer experience. And even doing some evaluations right after win-losses. How was your buying experience? Whether you chose our solution or you didn't, how was it? What could we do to be better? Because ultimately you want to continue to improve that customer experience, which increases your chances of customer success.
Yeah, and we could talk or debate this notion of where customer success sits in the organization, and I think we'll come back to that. But it's funny, as you were talking in the beginning about making buying easier, I could just hear Brent Adamson of Gartner, who has been on the show a couple of times and just talks about make buying easier. Buying is broken. You've got all these people on the buying committee. What can you do to make it easier? And I can't emphasize enough. And what's so interesting about it, here we are, we're talking about hugging your customer. But what Adamson's research showed was the buying process is so broken that by the time the customer actually does buy the product, they already hate you. And so it really is an interesting thing if you can make it easy for them to acquire. And this isn't something you can that is a slam dunk. I mean, we're not talking about buying Word, which we all understand and know. Often these are complicated sales. So the second thing that you mentioned that made me think a lot was about this personal relationship. And, I know a number of organizations have CMOs along with all the execs are executive sponsors. Did you have that? And was that part of your program?
Absolutely. Yes, we had an executive sponsorship program. So I was able to develop some personal relationships with our customers. And I leveraged those in a couple of ways. I think it's really important for a CMO to understand, how to bring the customer story out to the employees, how to inspire the employees with what customers are trying to do, and then the value that they're getting from the technology. So I would often invite customers onto the weekly stand-up, and I would do an interview, kind of like Drew, you're doing with me. Have them help shape their story to begin with, right? Do the heavy lifting of helping them put their slides together and their talking points so they felt comfortable and confident talking about it, and then just opening it up to questions so all the employees could get more engaged and bought into helping that customer be successful.
I love that idea. And honestly, I hadn't really heard on any show, not once has anybody talked about bringing their customer to a town hall. And so that's just a revelation to me at this moment. I have to pause on that. And then further, making that really easy, like help them with the slides, rehearse it to make sure that they look good. I love that idea. That takes being an executive sponsor and one more step, because you're at that point really helping them see, wow, we really did accomplish something cool together. That's so interesting. So how many, just give us a sense of at any given time, how many customers might you have that you were the executive sponsor of?
We kept it quite small. So at Reltio, we had about 100 customers total. And these are big customers, Global 2000, big deals. So it was really important that we kept a small ratio of customer to executive. And then the extended leadership team also had their customers that they were working with more closely.
And some of that, I imagine there's some chemistry involved, because it must be a little weird. They've got, you're talking to your customer and yet there's a lot of other things they have going. So how do you make sure that you're being helpful, but not just a pain?
Yeah. So I usually start it with, I am one of your advocates within the company, right? And I attend the business reviews. So when they're discussing the roadmap of what they're planning to do and then how our company fits into that roadmap, I'm there. I'm one of the key executives understanding what they're trying to accomplish. And then if they come into any struggles or challenges, I can help advocate for them and help communicate within the organization why it's so critical to help them at this moment in time.
Are you the bat phone? I mean, is that the idea that this is they call you when there's a real big problem, and so you can organize, you're the one throat to choke, as they say, that for the customer?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to encourage that to be a standard practice, right? There are processes in place to follow, but if those processes are not working for you, then there is a bat phone that you can call.
Got it. All right. All right. Well, clearly I'm dating myself with the bat phone. But having said that, let's bring on Simon Schaffer, who is the CMO of Case, Paper, and Star of episode 157 of Renegade Thinkers Unite. Hey, Simon, how are you doing?
Hey, Drew. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh my gosh, it's great to see you. And I know you used to visit your customers all the time during before the pandemic. What did you do to keep up those relationships during the pandemic?
Well, one of the things we did during the pandemic, we actually started a customer awards program called On the Case, and really celebrating our customers who really go above and beyond for their customers, really highlighting the story that we're telling them that they're actually executing on a day-to-day basis for their customers. So really highlighting both what they do for their customers and their communities and their employees. So it was really something to highlight how they're going above and beyond for the people that they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And we did that around the country, and then we paired that up with on-site visits from a distance, if that was something they were into, or it was a call like this where we got on with ownership and really had a conversation in a personal level. And they really, really appreciated it, especially last year.
And that's so interesting because a lot of CMOs might not have launched an awards program when you had to do it virtually, but nonetheless that you did. Now, I happen to know a fair amount about this awards program, as you know, and I know that you had a lot of fun with it because your brand is about a lot of fun. I don't know if you can remember off the top of your head what some of those awards were or are, but I think it would help because humor is very much part of your brand. And I think that bringing humor even through the awards is just such a cool thing.
Well, one of them was like, we give a sheet award. And we had nice laser engraved wooden plaques built. And, if you've ever won awards, a lot of them are very fancy and they're crystal. And so we said, what can we do that's going to be different, that's going to go on the wall and they're going to look at it, or people are going to come through and you see these awards and something that's going to jump out at you that's just going to be just out there compared to what's normally there. So there was also a lot of excitement around the actual award that they got that had a lot of fun with it. So it wasn't just, hey, congratulations, you won. It was also done in a way that was very unique from what they've usually expected.
So, this is so much part of your brand and how you think about and celebrate your brand, and with a sense of humor. At least I think it's funny being a punster myself. Let's talk about that, and as a customer retention weapon, the use of humor and being human in your relationships and conversations with them.
So now more than ever, smiling and laughing is so necessary, and last year more than ever. And so there was such a human element of this, of understanding, there's tough days, everyone's having tough days, and having a moment where you could just laugh or smile, those become so important. So being able to deliver that in a really human way and highlighting especially how to laugh really became a center point to everything that we were doing around how we're relating to our customers. And we brought this into our sales strategy too. So we had salespeople who, one of their activities, one of their focuses last year was actually to do handwritten notes to customers. And some of them scoffed and said, oh, what is this going to really do? And then, within 60 days of launching this, they were getting phone calls. I was getting phone calls like, wow, this has been such an impact. People are writing me back and they couldn't believe I took the time to do this. And keep in mind, all of these cards that we had printed up had some level of humor in it. So it was just that personal touch that was really needed last year when being social and interacting with people was really not possible.
And I know you're a fan of handwritten notes because I think you actually send them to employees too, don't you? You personally?
Yes. Yes, we have an internal awards program that we recognize people who are on the case internally, who go above and beyond for fellow coworkers and for customers. And so we actually recognize that internally. And I make it a habit of every quarter to write handwritten notes, send it to their home, not to the office, so they get it at home, really thanking them and highlighting what in their story really resonated with me and the people who read it.
And what I think is so important in this is you're leading by example. You personally write these notes. And then when you were working with sales, the other thing that's sort of nice, because you're in the paper business and the fact that you're using paper the medium and the message sort of come together pretty well. So it's all good. Okay. I love all of this. And is there anything else that when you think about your customer relationships, because I mean, you guys have been in business for 75 years, the third generation leadership of this from a family business, how, I mean, talk about some of the, just the nature of your customer relationships.
They're very personal. I mean, Jakki just said it earlier about, it's such about the personal relationship, and we really strive to do that at every level in the organization. So it's not just the salesperson that's developing a relationship, it's customer service, it's people in our operations, it's people in shipping, our truck drivers. I mean, our truck drivers are picking up, Philly cheesesteaks and driving it to our customers in Connecticut. No one's asking anybody to do this. No one's saying, hey, can you do this? No, they just naturally do it. And so you have connections with our customers at every level. And it just creates such a stronger bond with a customer, realizing that it's not just a thing a salesperson's doing. It's something that's ingrained in what we do, and it has been for decades.
So this isn't Dunder Mifflin?
No, but we do have a crazy, lovable cast of characters.
Yes, you do. All right. Well, let's bring in everyone, and I love that. I was reading some other funny thing about that cast the other day. Let's, for a second, I do want to talk about, and I'd like to plug CMO Huddles for a second, because you guys know we launched it in 2020. It's an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described Huddles as timely conversations with smart peers in a trusted environment, while another called it a cross between an expert workshop and a therapy session. So I wanted to ask you all, maybe you could sort of, does this match your experience? Trying not to put you on the spot. What do you think?
I'm a late addition to CMO Huddles. I just joined kind of at the beginning of this year, so I don't have the history that Jakki and Simon do, but it's an amazing group of people. I have met some really incredible folks that I'm learning a lot from. I've also been able to share some of my knowledge with, and I've gotten some great recommendations on vendors that I'm already, working with. So it's been a fantastic partnership and relationship with CMO.
And I appreciate you, because you're so darn active on our Slack channel, which is just one of those cool things that I think is great. Simon, you're fairly invested being on the board of advisors. Any thoughts you want to share on CMO Huddles?
Absolutely. And I'll give a tangible takeaway. I mean, early last year when we first started, I had a sales leader that came and talked about how can the salespeople get more involved in marketing and help have more input. And one of the huddles, somebody talked about how they developed and curated a sales advisory board. And so we went ahead and we actually implemented one of those. And it has been a huge success internally. I mean, the alignment between sales and marketing has never been better, as they really are invested in what we're doing. They're connected in what they're doing. And there's way more engagement in every aspect of what we're doing from a marketing perspective. And the adoption from a sales perspective is a lot better than it has been in the past. So, and that came from an idea that came from the group. I wish I could give credit to the person who brought that up, of course, but it came out of the huddles, that concept.
Well, we do keep everything confidential, so it's okay that you didn't.
There you go.
All right. Well, Jakki, not to put you on the spot, but feel free to add, or we'll just keep moving.
Absolutely. So I joined just around the global pandemic. And the questions I was asking was, what are other CMOs doing during this difficult time? So for me, Drew, it was really fantastic and valuable to have all these CMOs come together and be able to brainstorm and talk and share ideas and give feedback on what seems to be working and what doesn't work. Also, I think as a CMO, we have a really big challenge because everything is changing so quickly, including technology and market conditions and Google algorithms, right? So it's so valuable to be able to get together. I look forward to it every month to together questions, get advice, and be able to implement some of them. I'll say one of the most valuable ones for me this year was actually the Super Huddle, which was focused on CEO-CMO relationships, where we all did a little brainstorm what to do, what not to do. So I always feel like there's really good actionable takeaways.
Love it. All right. And Jakki has constantly reminded me that we need a call to action on everything we do. So if you are a CMO that can share and care and dare with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com. How's that for a call to action, Jakki?
Good job.
Good. All right. All right. So let's get back to the topic at hand. And this is really a critical one that I see when I think about customer success and I think about the CMO role. So many CMOs compensation and marketing's compensation is based on, what the vernacular net new logo, which we know is net new customers in the door. And they aren't rewarded as much for existing customers or satisfaction and or existing customer growth. And it seems to me this discourages CMOs to spend any time in this area if this is what you're getting paid for. So I'm wondering about it, your organizations, what you've done to sort of make sure that this isn't the case.
So my top KPI for me and my team is customer retention for this year. And, we actually have fairly high customer retention. So, we're just trying to maintain the high level of customer retention. But I made sure that was our number one priority because we see so much, repeat sales, new sales that come from existing customers that it just makes logical monetary sense. And I've had that focus with previous teams I've led as well. And it always has made sense. So.
And did you have to negotiate with your CEO to sort of get that as your top KPI versus, say, getting a certain percentage of pipeline in the door?
To a small degree. I mean, what was interesting is that the sales team was also recognizing around the same time that customer retention really needed to be higher up on the priority list. And so, my focus on that was well received. And I just had to make sure that everyone was comfortable with the fact that we're going to be doing both. We're going to be, thinking about customers and how to retain them and also looking for new ones and prospecting and helping the sales team, close more deals. So it wasn't a huge heavy lift. In other companies where I've pushed customer retention to be a top priority, it has been a heavier lift at times. And usually I've had to do some education, either with the executive team or the CEO around, hey, these customers, just because they signed up with us now does not mean that they're going to continue to sign up with us. We have to make sure they are happy and satisfied for the long haul if we want to keep them.
And Jakki, it's interesting since you had a CXO, customer success leader. And so therefore their job is totally tied to that. So where did that leave you as the CMO?
Yeah, 100% of my responsibility was net new logos, bringing in net new business. But for me, the critical success factor is happy customers. It's so much easier to market and sell if you can leverage the voice of the customer, as Marshall was pointing out earlier. So I have a vested interest in wanting to ensure that our customers are happy because I want to make it a natural feeling for them to want to say, what can I do to help you guys? Is there an opportunity for me to be an advocate for you? That is really what I strive for with the customer relationships that we have within the organization.
Yeah, it still feels like this is, at the end of the day, you're sitting down with your boss and she's saying that they are saying that what percentage of net new logos did you drive, right? And this is where, so unless you can tie a link somehow from customer success to acquisition, I just wonder if organizationally we can really solve, you can as a CMO afford to spend energy in this other area. it's interesting. To me, it presents a conflict. Well, Simon, I know that you get to decide this. Where do you see this in terms of? I mean, a lot of your business comes from existing customers, and I know that. So, how do you think about existing customers versus growth versus acquiring new ones?
So with our existing customers, I think it was about developing unique tools to keep them invested in who we are and and where we're going as an organization, so that there's this constant ability to grow with them as they grow. New products are one way that we measure that. So how many new products are we selling to our existing accounts, and being able to diversify what we're selling them is one thing that we look at in terms of growth. And how we do that, of course, is making sure that we're consistent with our message, and we're doing it in a way that's unique and memorable. The other side of it, we made an acquisition during the pandemic right at the beginning. And so as an example there, this was a company that had gone bankrupt. We really needed to put some energy behind it. So, putting together a website, developing sales tools, swatch kits, and having a strategy to get the name out there, we just ran the numbers recently. We've actually doubled sales, doubled the amount of orders intake per day, and doubled the amount of sales that we've done since that acquisition. And a lot of it had to do with the work of establishing the brand. That we had to build a whole new brand as well, and that's something our team did. And what I would also add to all of this is we also look at internal metrics. So knowing that if we promote and we work with our internal stakeholders, our employees, that their interactions with our customers are so important. And so that's another factor, and another metric we look at is employee engagement. Understanding that the more engaged our employees are in what we're doing, the more impact they're going to have with our customers on a day-to-day basis.
Interesting. Yeah. It always comes back to engaged employees. It's just amazing, and all of these things. Okay, well, this is the moment where we're going to take a quick video break so we can grab the gin out of the refrigerator, grab a cold, ice cold glass, and we'll be back in 30 seconds for our tasting, which I am really looking forward to.
Our new website launches in a month. Great work, everyone. Launch means marketing, though, and marketing means content. We need something that's like punchy and shareable and does well on social. Who was the customer again?
Millennials.
That's right. They're so great. Okay, so let's hear your ideas. What do you got? Nice.
Okay, wait, I have something much better.
Oh, nice. I like it. Can we make it go viral? Let's check in with the social media managers.
Oh my god, look at this tiny hamster eat a tiny burrito.
Oh my god, it's so tiny.
I'm so dead.
That's not good enough. It's ideation time.
Siri, what does on fleek mean?
All right, we are on fleek here. Okay, well, let's bring on today's gin, by the way, is Dry Fly Washington Dry Gin. And today we're joined by Dry Fly's founder and head distiller, Patrick Donovan. Patrick,
hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Are you at the distillery?
I am. We're about to move into our brand new facility, so it's a little bit torn apart, but I am here, and we're actually making gin today, so it's a good day for it.
It's a good day. Are those barrels back there?
Yeah, so I'm on the back side of our tasting room, so they look pretty cool right there, but they look better from the other side. So
tell us. So I'm going to show this beautiful bottle, which I had fun taking pictures. So there it is, Dry Fly Washington Dry Gin, and you've got a wonderful fly, as in a fly fisherman's kind of a fly. What's the story? What makes this gin special?
You know, our gin is really fun. It's actually our best seller to this date, and it was the second product we ever made. We didn't like gin very much, so we made a gin that we would drink, and that kind of represented our area. So the botanical deck is super unique. it was kind of one of the early, I would say, American style gins, kind of non-traditional. It's really light, mellow. A lot of non-gin drinkers like ourselves really enjoy it.
All right. Well, I'm going to give it a taste here, and I'm encouraging the guests to do the same. Wow, I get some of that Fuji in the.
Yeah, especially chilled down. The apple comes through. That's our second biggest botanical outside of juniper.
And this is the thing. People aren't used to drinking gin straight up, and it's typically that you don't do it because you always either have it in a martini or you have it with tonic. This is a very sippable gin. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, it's tasty. I can sip it straight, a little chilled. It's delicious.
Yeah.
So I was never a gin drinker before the global pandemic. I did this bartending class, and they said, if you like vodka, add some juniper berries and things to it and see what you think. And I was like, wow, I really liked it. So I have to say, I've never had gin on its own. I've always mixed it with tonic this year, but I really like the flavors in this one.
Yep. Yeah, the gin is really, like I said, really mellow, and it works well in a lot of drinks that you traditionally wouldn't have gin in. And, we use it in our Greyhound. So with grapefruit juice, it adds some complexity. The Bloody Mary that we do, I would prefer if we used it with gin, but we did with vodka, and it's really fun. You can pull it a lot of different directions. That's kind of what I like about our gin a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the juniper is not particularly powerful at all, right? I would not call this an herbaceous. I mean, the juniper is kind of back.
Yep. Yeah, it's very, very much not a traditional London dry style.
And even though you call it a dry gin, which is so interesting. So I'm gonna go through the botanicals and then call on Nicole. But I get a little of the coriander. I couldn't get the lavender, the mint. You've got some, and all of these things are sourced from Washington, except the juniper.
Except the juniper, yeah. There's a bunch of juniper grown in Washington State. It's just we haven't found an FDA-approved supplier of it. So that comes out of Oregon, which is close, but not Washington.
So using Fuji apples was an interesting choice. I mean, using apples at all. This is the first gin, and by the way, this is the 15th show, so this is the 15th gin. This is the first time we've had any with an apple, and then to choose Fuji apple. And to bring on, we have a botanical expert on this show, so I'd like to bring on Nicole. So Nicole, can you tell us something special about Fuji apples?
Of course I do. So Fuji apples are the sweetest apples in the world, and they're also the most popular apple variety in all of Japan. A fun fact is that Washington State is the leading producer of all apples, representing 65% of all the U.S. fresh apple production, and the state exports 1/3 of its fresh crop to 60 markets all over the world, accounting for 95% of all the U.S. apple production.
Wow. All right. So there it is on Fuji apples. Nicole, thanks for our botanical update.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. But it is an interesting one because it does take it, because apple, a lot of times it's used as a sweetener, and it does take it in an interesting direction. So, Patrick, anything else that we should know about your distillery and what's the story behind Dry Fly?
Yeah, so we were the first distillery in Washington State since Prohibition. So we're kind of an old name in craft distilling. We turned 14 in September. And we have always done things what we felt like was the right way, but also coincidentally the hard way. And we're about to go through a major change. We're opening a brand new facility in the heart of downtown Spokane. It's really rare to see major manufacturing in a downtown location, so it should be really fun. We launched our canned cocktails almost 2 years ago, and that's kind of changed our business a lot. And our big focus has been to use locally sourced raw material. We actually make the base for the gin. If you've ever had our vodka, it's really buttery, creamy, and so that base for the gin being kind of more mellow and softer really lends itself that way. So yeah, it's been a lot of ups and downs, but it's been a fun ride so far. I mean, you make gin whiskey for a living. It's not the worst thing in the world. So.
Well, congratulations. And by the way, what's so funny about the fact that you use your vodka as the base, because, for the folks who drink vodka out there, you're kind of boring because vodka by definition is tasteless and flavorless. So, vodka, gin is just a good tasting vodka. So, all right. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the gin. I know I'm going to enjoy this. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing this with us.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. We'll see you later. Okay. So no doubt part of the customer success program is simply just sending everyone a bottle of Patrick's gin. But let's talk about some of the crazier things that you've tried that worked or didn't work when it comes to customer initiatives.
So can I follow that one up? Because I did something very similar. We had a customer who loved old fashions. And so after he presented at kickoff, we surprised him with this big basket of all the ingredients he would need to make an old fashioned, as well as a recipe for a slightly different recipe than he was used to. And he just absolutely loved it.
That's great. It's so much about just being in the moment, paying attention to them as humans. So that's a great story. Simon, Marshall, how about a sort of something out there in the customer success area?
Sure. So one of the things that me and the team did at a previous company I worked with was we had some customers that we were trying to reach out to in terms of renewals. They were not really responding. We weren't sure if they were mad at us. In some cases, we knew they were mad at us. So we actually sent them a box of cookies. Very low cost. They were branded with our logo, and just a little note saying, "Hey, we miss you. We'd love to hear how things are going with you." And we actually found that it led to some calls in, some emails in, and some renewals. So it was a low cost way to just kind of build that relationship and get some more renewals. And the marketing team loved it. So.
Well, I guess you call it a sweet program. Certainly that's what Simon might say. Very sweet program. So Simon, anything, we've already talked about the awards program in the middle of a pandemic, but I know you're a creative guy. So.
Yeah. Well, we made some notebooks and took a little bit of a risk, and I had one right here. Sheet happens, write that sheet down. Might have been a little bit of a risk, sending it around to customers, but they absolutely loved it. We had a similar T-shirt made that we give a sheet, and that was pretty out there for a lot of our industry and certainly for our sales force, and it turned out to not backfire at all.
But, again, I go back to this is consistent with the brand that you have developed over time. For those folks who don't know, Case Paper has a history. Even in the 60s, they were doing humorous advertising. So you have a humor in your DNA. And again, humor is an icebreaker. It creates all sorts of good ways. All right, so we have fun little things that we've done. We've got big initiatives that we've done. I'm really curious what metrics and what does, how do we measure this? And what are some of the ways that you look from a marketing standpoint? What does, maybe Marshall, you want to give us, what metrics are you looking at?
So we're certainly looking at, straight up renewals. For existing customers, are they renewing at the same level? Are they, is their share of wallet increasing? Are they buying not only the product they already have, but maybe expanding into other product areas? So we're tracking that revenue vis-a-vis the marketing programs that we're doing towards them. We're also obviously looking at the number of customers that are attending customer-specific events or user meetings, the specific tracks that they're going to, the feedback that they're giving us through customer surveys. So there's lots of data that we're managing and just trying to get a handle on in terms of the overall health of that customer. And is it good? Is it bad? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? And what are the programs we can use to influence them?
Interesting. Jakki, what about you?
Yeah, so for us, the ultimate is the NPS score, but we've recently added, percent of customers who are referenceable. So one of the meetings that I really enjoy attending are understanding which customers are in the green, which ones are alive and happy that we can go approach to find out if they could be advocates for us. We have a lot of metrics in the customer success organization, but in marketing, I have some as well. We had some goals as to, having one customer participate in a marketing activity every month for the calendar year. And so we would measure ourselves against that. Even in news releases, the more we can quote a customer, even if it's, we're doing this event and this customer is quoted, that helps a lot. So we had some metrics in marketing as well as within the customer success organization to measure customer success and advocacy.
So I can see why why you would want to include a customer in a release. How do you get the customer to make it feel like this is a good thing for them?
Yeah, it's, this is going to come in my do's and don'ts section, but one of the things that I've realized is there's a couple different ways you can approach a customer about helping you, right? There's the way that I've seen happen a lot, which isn't as successful. Oh, Drew, can I please ask you for this huge favor, right? I see a lot of people ask their customers in that way. And what I like to do is say, you know what? If you want to be a thought leader, we can provide you with that opportunity. We can really help you tell your story, shape your story, create that story for you, create talking points, even help you figure out what the flow of that story that you could tell publicly, but you could also share it internally to build more champions within your own organization around what you're doing. Are you interested in having our help to do that? So it's a very different approach than, will you please do me a favor? So I found that approach has worked quite well.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I realized as you were talking earlier that I just want to highlight. One of the things that you mentioned, regular cadence of support. And so what's interesting to me is if you say we are going to feature one of our customers every month, other customers see that. And eventually at some point they go, I want to be part of that. So that's a really smart thing to do, is think about the regular cadence of promoting it. I love this sort of assumptive, this is a good thing for you, we can teach you and help you in building your brand. This is if you would like to participate, as opposed to please. So very cool. So Simon, any other metrics that matter to you?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, just tracking products sold and kind of diversifying the portfolio that we're selling to our current customer base. And then as that's kind of more of a lagging indicator, the leading indicator, we kind of look internally, like what are we doing investing in the salespeople internally? So is it coming from just one person or is it coming from a lot of people? And obviously, the more salespeople we can get engaged in diversifying, the more it's going to lead to that result. So we kind of look internal, we look external, and then we have some fun metrics because our guarantee is you're going to love us or like if commitment isn't your thing. And we do have a fun, getting emails from customers saying, thank you so much. We love you. Thank you for coming through. We love you guys. And we actually have them sent in to us and we save each one of them. So the more emails like that we get, knows that we're heading in the right direction. So I know that's not a formal metric, but it is a fun metric that we enjoy tracking as well.
The number of love emails, put that right on that list, very top of the KPI. How many love emails did you get? Well, okay, yes. This is the moment where we ask on this show, what would Ben Franklin say? And one of the things that we haven't really talked about is how important it is to choose your customers well before they become customers. And I know that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about that because we got to fill our pipeline and we get them through sales and we want to close the deal. But it's interesting because sometimes there are customers that you can never satisfy. And so when I turn to old Ben, here's what he said: the rotten apple spoils his companions. The rotten apple spoils his companions. And as Melissa, our amazing producer, said, boy, is that tight, because we've already talked about apples on the show. But anyway, I do think there is an issue here. We're so busy trying to acquire customers, and they have a history of changing quickly. Is there anything in any of your processes that helps you sort of weed out that rotten apple?
Yeah, so I'm happy to go first on this one. So for us, we have a set of use cases where we really excel and do well. But sometimes there'll be an opportunity for a sales rep to try to get a deal closed where they're just going slightly outside the use case to do something different, outside of the go-to-market strategy. And I find that when we do that, things don't always work out. So that would be my advice is, really try to stay on your lane, stay in your lane, really understand who is your ideal customer profile. What do you really excel at in terms of being able to get people the results that they're expecting, and try not to stray too far outside of that. And then you can avoid getting the customers who churn.
Marshall, any thoughts on that?
What I've found is you definitely have to have the right buyer personas identified in terms of who are the target buyers and which ones are going to, potentially give you the largest amount of engagement over the long haul. But I also have realized over my career that many times that bad apple who could spoil the bunch just has an unusual issue, had a bad experience with somebody in your organization, what have you. They just need some love and care and attention. They need somebody to listen to them. And, marketing can partner with the customer success team to, create programs, campaigns, account-based marketing outreach to those particular accounts to really customize the messaging and get to why, what's going on with you? How can we help? And I would say when I've seen that situation, probably 70 to 80% of the time, we've been able to turn that around with that close partnership with customer success, because we just took the time to listen and to help reorient that customer to how we could really help them be successful. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. And by the way, Peter Weingard, who thank you for listening. And yes, dear Ben did say a penny saved is a penny earned, but I think it's a customer saved is a customer earned in this case. But in this notion, and Jay Baer wrote a book on hugging your haters and how those people actually end up becoming advocates. There's a difference, and this is the point I was getting at is, Jakki referenced it in this idea that you could bring them under for a false reason, like they wanted X and you really are delivering Y. But I do think there are still some that show through the buying process that they're just not right. That there is a mismatch here. And I don't know if there are enough filters in place, because they could be a persona alignment, Marshall, but they still could just have a history of churn. And, they eat up resources from customer success team. They eat up resources from tech support. They just, I don't know where this fits in, but I'm going to say there are some folks that just simply can't be satisfied. And at that point, you just say, here's your money and see ya, kind of thing, right? You need to walk away. Okay, we're going to move on that. I'm wondering if you've witnessed any attempts at trying to get customer advocates that went awry somehow, or you. And it doesn't have to be your organization. We can make fun of what happened at somebody else's, but I'm just curious if you've seen this and what lessons might have been learned. Simon, you got anything for me?
I'm laughing. We do have one. And, we had a customer that loved us. And this is their quote. "We love you so much. You're so important to us. We don't want anybody else to know about you. So we don't want to tell anybody about you because we want to keep that a secret." So it was both very flattering and extremely frustrating at the same time. So trying to engage that customer was actually through our On the Case Awards, giving them an award and actually having them engage in that process. They didn't want to engage for that reason, which that was frustrating.
There you go. That's hilarious. Yes, we love you so much. We do not want to share you. Wow. Marshall, anything in that area?
I've had several situations where we identified a potential customer advocate, and then we got into it with them, and trying to map out their story and helping them map out their story. And then suddenly, there was something that was going wrong with the product that they were using from us. And so then we've had to kind of regroup and try to get that solved before we could move forward. And a couple of times then we weren't able to get the problem solved to the satisfaction of the customer. And so we just had to back away. Now they didn't leave us as a customer. So we just had to we're biding our time until there's some new developments that can be put in place to really fully resolve their problem. So, that happens. I mean, that's just the customer relationship, right? I mean, you have to be ready and adaptable for that.
And, as it's thinking of this, and one of the ways that's really important right now are the sort of the G2s and the Capteras and these places that have these reviews, and sometimes getting customers to go and do those. Jakki or Marshall, do you experience trying to get, Jakki, you do? Great. Talk a little bit about that and the challenge and how you overcome it.
Yeah, so typically I try to segment our customers to figure out, who are those people who want to be the thought leaders, right? They already know the story they want to tell. They're pretty self-sufficient. Then there's the group who, probably doesn't know how to put the story together, so they're a little reluctant. They require a little more hand-holding. And then there's the group that just can't. Like, we cannot be advocates for you. We're not allowed to use the logo. We're not allowed to be quoted. That's where I think those anonymous, Gartner peer insight reviews are a great opportunity to get those customers engaged, because you don't need to include a name. You don't need to include a company. It just says, here's my industry, here's my title, and they can provide a review for you. And I'm finding that in the tech space in particular, people are relying more and more on those third-party review sites before engaging directly. So having customers do that is a higher priority for me now than it's been before.
Yeah, and I think that's actually quite brilliant, and that solves a major problem. It's okay, you can't be on the record, but you can be important and contribute to that. Wow, I hadn't really thought about using those folks, because that fills in. And so, yeah, you've got the thought leaders who you can bring to your town halls, the reluctant ones who you coach, and then these last group. Wow, that's just a great thought. Marshall, any other thoughts on getting folks with review sites?
I have done a little bit of that work at previous companies, but I love Jakki's idea. That's my takeaway from this discussion. I'm going to go do that tomorrow.
Exactly.
I mean, I think the other thing about those sites is you have to really carefully vet which ones are, have the right level of cachet and trust in the industry that you're working in, because there are some fly-by-night ones out there that purport to be really objective, but yet they're not. You have to, to get your review in there, you have to sponsor, pay them $10,000 and stuff like that, and so you have to really carefully vet that if you're going to participate. That's my piece of advice.
Got it. Okay, so we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to ask each of you to provide one do. We'll start with you, Simon. One do and one don't when it comes to cultivating customer champions.
Do get personal. Get to know your customers, spend time with them, and cultivate that relationship from a personal level, I think is a definite do. And a don't. Don't use humor unless you really think through the unintended consequences of it.
Yes. Okay. Well, there might be a person along the way, but it's funny. You immediately thought of Harvey Mackay and one of his books. I think it was Swim with the Sharks, but just totally about getting personal to the point that you call your customers on their birthday because no one else is doing that. Okay. Jakki, one do and one don't.
Sure. Do make it easy. Make it easy to buy, make it easy to learn, make it easy to advocate and tell the story. So I would say those are my do's. And then on the don't side, I'm just going to reinforce what I said earlier. Don't go into asking customers to be champions or advocates for you with the wrong mindset. Don't go into it as asking for a big favor. And I think it'll be a lot easier to build champions by taking that the right mindset into it.
Yes, give them the opportunity to their personal brand or professional brand along with you. I love that. Great. Okay, and Marshall, take us home.
Sure. So do make sure that as a marketing leader, customer retention is a way that you are measuring yourself and your team, and that you have programs against that. Don't ignore the clear partnership that you can build with your customer success organization if that doesn't report into marketing. They can be a really great help in building a full-fledged program that's both in-person outreach from them as well as marketing programs that your organization is driving.
I love it. Okay. Yes. Partner with that customer satisfaction. All right. Thank you, Marshall, Simon, Jakki. You're all great sports. Thank you, Dry Fly Distillery, for your really yummy Washington Dry Gin. And thank you, audience, for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about small budget marketing with Chi Liang, JD Dillon, and Luann Tierney. Cue the music, Melissa. Renegade Thinkers Live is produced by the amazing Melissa Caffrey. Our botanical expert is Nicole Hernandez. For show notes and past episodes, please visit renegade.com, home of quite possibly the savviest B2B marketing agency in New York City. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.